What is your soul's most aligned path and are you on it? Well, let's get into it. So, what is the soul's path? The soul's most aligned path is basically the true path. So, the idea is that you, as a soul, before you came into this lifetime, you're hanging out with your spirit team and your spirit guides and your council, and you're deciding what you're going to do this lifetime. Like, what are some things you're going to hit? What are some, goals, as we like to call it here on earth? And, you place that into a little contract, which we call the soul's contract. You come to earth this lifetime, but the really mean thing is that we forget everything, right? So although our soul planned this lifetime and had a little bit of an idea of what was going to happen, part of being human is forgetting it all, having the great forgetting. So what we're stuck with is we have two options. We could either follow our heart and hopefully, our heart and our intuition and really stay on our path, or we've been given free will and we have this thing called the ego, and we also have just like earth and world, and we can follow another path, which I like to call the default path, which is like, these are the default things. It's like, I'm going to check this off my checklist. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to get married, and just like doing all the checklist stuff, which ends up being a default path, which is a little bit different than the soul's path. I think another way to look at it is, if you grew up any sort of Christian or anything like that, you might have heard like God's will versus your will. So us as a human, we're like, yeah, this is like what I'm going to do. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes it works out just fine. But then at some point you're like, man, this is like not working for me. I thought this was going to make me happy. Like, why is this not making me happy? And it's because you've found yourself on a default path rather than your most aligned true path, right? So how do you find it for you? Well, number one, I really think you have to start to identify the default path. Like, you have to realize and awaken to the idea that you're on a path that you've been following that is somebody else's blueprint. So when you're like, oh man, I think my mom told me to do this, or I started to do this because that's what everybody else in my life was doing. So really just recognizing the default path. Don't get upset about it. It's okay. We all end up on default paths. It happens. And just know that there is a road to your most aligned path. So once you realize that, like, okay, I might be on a default path, the next thing is to start to follow your heart. Really, it's your heart, it's your intuition that's going to bring you to that aligned path. So in order to get to the aligned path, there's what I like to call like a detour road. Like, there's this road from the default path to the aligned path. And the detour road really requires a lot of courage and bravery. So it's this feeling of, I don't know where I'm going, but I really feel like I need to go in this direction. So in order to find that aligned path, you really want to work on like following what you're feeling pulled to. You might not know exactly where it's taking you, but if you're feeling like your heart is taking you there and it's, you're feeling safe enough to take the steps, go ahead and let yourself try things. So this is really like a time of experimentation, of trying, of like meeting new people, trying new things, so that ultimately with time, that's going to bring you to that real, true aligned path, like what you're really meant to do here on earth, what kind of lifestyle you're really meant to have, and something that feels more in alignment with your soul rather than the default stuff. Another trick is you can take some time to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine your future self. Like, just close your eyes and see if the future version of yourself, right? So maybe she's a little older or he's a little older. And just kind of, I like to see them maybe in a house or in a place that you really like. Maybe it's your future home, right? So really visualizing that. And as you see your future self, I want you to see what looks different about them, what's different about their life. You can even, if you feel like you can connect with them, ask them, what's life like? How did they get here? And that future version of yourself is actually living your aligned life. So you can follow your heart to the aligned path. You can also follow your curiosity, because the aligned path is naturally going to be different than the default path. The default path is like a blueprint. You're following somebody else's map. And your aligned path is going to be very original to you. So what the hard part about that is that you're not really going to be able to follow other people's footsteps, which means that you're going to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in the unknown. So the only way to get comfortable with the unknown is to really feel into curiosity. So rather than kind of looking like, oh, I only want to take a step because I know that it's the right step, you want to start getting comfortable with taking steps because you're curious. Like, oh, It would be so, I wonder what like it would be like to take a pottery class. Like, I wonder what it would be like to, live somewhere different. I'm gonna go, discover a new neighborhood or whatever. It does not mean that it's like the absolute, like this is exactly what you need to do. But your curiosity is gonna let you at least adventure. Because somebody who's living an aligned life and an aligned path is really an explorer. It's somebody who's a trailblazer. And I know that that's what you're meant for. I know it's not super fun to be called to that, but that is really what you're here for. It's to pave a new path. And you're going to need bravery, your heart, and curiosity to find that aligned path.